RTV1140. It's a diesel Kubota. Unless you have a rack, this is not super fun. I lucked out. I have one. There's the transaxle. Here is the subframe. Now, some issues you're going to encounter. This drive shaft. This one was very, very seized, so I had to get after it with an air hammer. You do not have to open the hydraulic system at all if you have all these hydro accessories. This has a dump bed and everything. I just unbolted this from the block and bungeed it out of the way. No problem. You don't have to open any brake lines. There's two. There's one on each side. You can just hang the caliper. Technically, this is just a brake cylinder, but you can hang that. It's not a big deal. Only 4 bolts hold the whole subframe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. You do not have to take the leaf springs. I took the shackles loose, so I dropped the whole bottom. You have to do that. Cannot get this out with this end. The axles come right off. They just pop right off. And if you got to make sure when you go put them back in, there's a master. There's a key. I can't really. Yeah. So there's like a double open spot where there's not splined. So it only goes in one direction. The engine swap is pretty problematic. You cannot get the engine off the subframe because you can't get it high enough to get past the engine mounts. There's 4 bolts on either side of the engine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 in the subframe at the bottom. And then there's 2 on the side here that hold the transaxle. They go right here. So, obviously a bunch of cables and whatnot. The real problem is in the engine that you use to put in the Kubota. So here we have the D1105, I believe it is. Yeah, D1105. Same exact block. D1105. But there's so many differences from the engine to engine. This is the one out of the Kubota. This is out of a Toro Groundskeeper, whatever the fuck, mower. Now, there was an immense amount of things that I had to swap to make this work. The block is the same. All of the holes are there, but the configurations are vastly different. I'll just go each way and I'll explain to you. You start at the back here. So the RTV, the transaxle runs on the spline. 4 bolts, this pops off, and then there's just your regular flywheel bolt pattern back here. You have to swap this. You also have to swap the back plate and the 2 studs. The Groundsmaster did not have those. The difference in the plate is where the starter mounts. For some reason, and I lined them up, and they are indeed different. I don't know why, and frankly, I don't care. In order to, let's see, and I'm just going to go to the next side. Let me grab a light. So over here, this is the least labor-intensive side. You've got an exhaust manifold that you have to swap off the Kubota, and then this. Now, in the Groundsmaster, this was a plug. It was a 7mm Allen, just a pipe plug, basically. Well, the Kubota has an engine oil cooler. This is the coolant feed for that engine oil cooler. That hose comes under the transaxle and engine, comes up from down here, and goes into this. It is important to have this. This was a huge pain in the ass to get out. It was very problematic. You have to swap your, no, we'll go to the front here. You have to swap your alternator bracket from the Groundskeeper, or from the Kubota to the you know what I'm saying. You have to swap your water pump, because the water pump for the Kubota has, once again, another feed for another cooler. The Groundskeeper has that hole blocked off. This is the pile of parts, by the way. I had to swap the water pump pulley because it's a little bit bigger. Had to swap the water neck. I didn't have to swap the whole housing, the thermostat housing. Had to swap this hose. Had to swap this hose and this neck because it has a slightly different curve on it. Some things I noticed about this block, this case has two places where you can put an oil filter. So this is where it is on the Kubota, and I don't know what this application is. The balancers are the same. This case does not have the opportunity or the access for a second oil filter location. I don't know what the difference is there. That's about it on the front. Now on the side is where it gets kind of fun. I was worried I was going to have to swap all these lines. I didn't really want to crack into the injection pump or any of that, so I winged it a little bit. You have to swap the intake manifold because the mower one comes straight up, the Kubota comes in from the side. You have to swap these little lines and this little fitting here into the injection pump. Here's where the problem is. The Kubota has a manually cam-driven fuel pump. The Groundskeeper does not. Now you think, oh, you should just be able to pop that cover off. Well, you can, you pop that cover off. Well, inside the Kubota, it has an eccentric. You see the silver right here? Basically a cam that runs that fuel pump alone. Inside the Groundskeeper, Groundsmaster, whatever the fuck it is, does not have that eccentric. So the only way to get that eccentric would be to pop this entire case and it just bolts on and off. Now, I didn't have the time or, you know, any sort of inclination to do that. So I'm just going to be converting the RTV to an electric fuel pump. The balancers are the same. That's not a problem. Now, oh yeah, your fuel shut-off solenoid, that has to be changed. What else? That's pretty much it. Now here's what got me. The oil pan. I was not expecting to have to swap the oil pan. Now, if you look at this one off the mower, you see how deep this is? This will not work in the Kubota. It is too deep, it will hit the subframe. This is the Kubota oil pan. If I could ever give you the right light. That's the Kubota oil pan. Much thinner, much skinnier. I have not put it on yet, so I don't know if I have to swap the oil pickups yet. I'm gonna assume yes, I will have to swap the oil pickups. There's a lot that goes into this, especially if you're using a Kubota out of a different application. I was not expecting this amount of difference. Being that they're the same engine and everything. Oh, the other thing you have to swap your linkage. But I didn't swap the linkage, I just swapped the linkage end. This is for the Kubota. Everything else is relatively straightforward. Getting it out was the easiest part, to be honest with you. I'm on probably hour 15 or 16 of doing this, and that's taking short breaks. The only way I was able to lift all of this stuff, I've done all this completely by myself. I've been strapping them to the rack. As you can see, they're on my toolbox. I just lifted them up to the height, put them on the toolbox so I could do the work at chest level. It'd have been miserable to do all this on the ground or whatever. As far as getting out the thing, I have a rolling skid, which is awesome and an incredible tool. I just dropped it all out onto it, moved it, was able to get it all disassembled. Now, once I get this oil pan swapped, I'm gonna go ahead and throw it back together. As far as getting it out of the bike, piece of cake. 2 hours, 3 hours max. Doing it the first time, overcoming all of this bullshit that you didn't know is pretty difficult, but it's not insurmountable. The hydraulic ram for the dump bed, this machine had a dump bed. Really easy, just 2 pins, one in the bed, one in the subframe, and then 2 quick disconnects. Quick disconnects are super nice. I really appreciate this feature. So I've been able to, at this entire time, to not open the hydro system at all. I was kind of worried about it. They're fairly, it's fairly expensive fluid, and I just didn't see that necessary. So this is just a This is obviously not inclusive. This is just the tips and tricks. Hopefully somebody gets some help from this trying to swap one of these cocksuckers, because I was not expecting this. Not expecting this at all. So, I mean, and I'm just an auto mechanic, and I know dudes do this for a living are probably gonna watch this and be like, haha, this dickhead can't work on anything, but, well, you know, everyone's new at some time, so. Hope somebody gets some benefit from this. This is just a one take with some shaky camera work. And hopefully a lot of good information. Thanks a lot.